Welcome to the Hard Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Come here weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network.
Hi, I'm Fawn Germer.
And I'm Michelle Brigman.
And this is the Hard Won Wisdom Podcast.
Season 4.
Season 4. This is season 4. And we are going to start with a secret. Okay. For those of you on YouTube, you may notice I'm using a special background today. It's a replica of Michael Scott's desk at Dunder Mifflin because it's the office. And I did something during the last season, which was not the best thing in my life. I learned a lot. I learned a lot that may be of use to you, but it was a definite learning experience for me. And that was, I went back to work.
What?
Shocking, because as many of you know, I have made my living as a motivational speaker for 23 years as a best-selling author. So I write books, speak all over the world. If you've got speaking for me, let me know. I'm always loving that. But a couple of things happened. One, COVID. And if you can imagine what that did to the convention and meetings industry, that it just killed my business. So I didn't have any business. And in the middle of that, I was enjoying life. I was on my bicycle riding out to the beach, and some pedestrian had AirPods in and finished his morning walk and did a U-turn to double back. And I'm on my bike and I shout, "Watch it." He doesn't hear me, just keeps going. And he walks into my bike and I went flying and slammed my head on the pavement. Thank God I had a helmet on. It was a moment in my life that shattered everything. I had no idea what a big deal that was going to be. But Michelle, you were there with me from the start of that because we were waiting to launch the podcast. And suddenly I couldn't work. It was a significant concussion that wouldn't heal. And over time, I started having really awful memory blackouts where there were these black holes. There were things that I knew and I couldn't access them, and there was no way to get to them. And I'd go to neurologists, and they finally told me that they thought I had early onset dementia or early onset Alzheimer's.
Which was the worst thing, that's such a trigger for you. So that was the worst thing you could have heard. It was awful.
I think it's a trigger for anyone, but for me especially, because my mother had been a stroke patient and then had Alzheimer's. And because she had the stomach tube from the stroke, it made her Alzheimer's journey even longer than most people. And so hearing those words and then getting put on the Alzheimer's medication was just devastating. Well, I do think I coped with it because I did go every week and I would swim with the manatees while I was waiting to find out what was going on. But the bad thing, and the reason this is pertinent to me getting a job, was that I had a very good policy, I thought, through the healthcare marketplace. And it was a Blue Cross policy that did not cover any of the specialty treatments that I needed for this concussion. So I couldn't get the brain therapy. I couldn't get a lot of things that I needed done, and I was paying out of pocket. So you add the fact that I had this accident, I needed good insurance. My memory was crap. So I couldn't work well. And then I'm worried about what's coming. And things started getting, there was just,
There's a lot of fear.
it was a hard time. I was still happy through that. I have to report to you all that. I do have good coping skills like that. I wasn't about to sacrifice one good minute because I knew that if I did have Alzheimer's, it was going to get very bad. But there was that one period where it didn't look good. I have a CT scan that is pretty scary looking. I still don't know why it looks like that. But the good news, and I'm going to jump to the end and then come back to the middle of the story. The good news is I had finally got the lumbar puncture, which is a spinal tap. And they tested for the Alzheimer's proteins, and I didn't have them. And then my cousin's son is in his residency for radiology, and I sent him that CT scan, and he says, Fawn, I think this is left over from your concussion. And it hadn't even occurred to me that a concussion at 14 months was still going to zap my memory. But turns out he was right. And so in the middle of that, a friend gets a promotion at a company, and I'm going to drag that out because when I tell you where it is, you'll realize what a mismatch. But it gets a promotion, and then I get offered a good job with good money and good benefits. And it was a job that was going to use the skills from my previous career as a journalist, which is my most natural innate skills, is information, editing, all of that. I thought, I can do this. And so I took the job. By the time I started the job, my memory was back. And right now, I am almost as good as I was before the accident. And it may be that, it's been a year and a couple of months. And so that probably is where my brain was going to be. Now I have senior moments, and I just laugh at them because I know the information's in there and it'll come to me. I'm fine with that. It's, before it was like somebody said, well, what street did you live on in Clearwater? I lived there 9 years and went on that street twice a week still. And I did not know the name of the street. And I remembered I had to look it up on a map. Can you imagine that? So anyhow, I had a happy ending with it. But in the middle of that, I've taken this job with really good benefits, good health insurance, and the job sounds great, except when you read the job description, it was never the job that I had. And if I had known that I was going to have a job like that, which was, I don't even want to talk about it. It was just not fun. It was just a lot of copy editing and stuff. I would never have taken the job. And I made it clear in the interview process, I was not a copy editor, but that's what it was. So I had this job, and for 3 months, I just every day tried to force myself to get through it. And now what's interesting about that is people were all like, you can't take a job. You've been independent so long. And I have been. I've had this privilege of, if it's a beautiful day and I want to go kayaking, I'll go kayak and I'll work late into the night. I have a great boss when I'm self-employed. So that nobody thought that I could go back to an office. That's not true. I had no problem having responsibilities every day that I had to do. I did have a problem in that particular position. It did not play to my strengths. They were nice people, but I was miserable. And Michelle, you were my touchstone, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I watched that. I would say a little, I'm going to call it kind of that fear-based decision. How often do we make decisions because we don't have clarity or insight into the future? And so we make decisions where we're running from something versus running to something fantastic. And then we get there and we're like, okay, wait a second.
right.
I made this based on the wrong criteria. And yes, you interviewed them for the things that you expected the role to be, and it seemed to be a fit. But I think it's just I think it's a really important validation of that advice of make sure you're running to something that is getting you closer to what you want and what you need, because otherwise kind of the odds are in your favor. It's not going to work out so well. And I think that's a bit of what you experienced too.
Well, and I just thought of it in terms of, okay, I don't have to work that many more years because, I could retire. And I thought I'll have really good insurance. That was the big thing, the
Yeah.
insurance. And it it was painful. I think
How many times a day did you call, Michelle?
ugh,
Oh my gosh, let me tell you.
I mean,
Talk.
some of the things, it was just some of the I mean, I was in this one meeting, and it was so horrible. And I was behaving myself for the first 45 minutes of it because I got sandbag people, something that just was, and I just finally blurted out, look, we all know the first rule of leadership is that you criticize in private and praise in public, right? And these people are just looking at me like, I mean, they just have no idea who I am as a person, what I'm capable of doing. And they were nice people, okay, but it was so bad. It was so bad. And Michelle, honestly, I could not have gotten through it if it hadn't been for you. And then came this day when it was like every Monday and Tuesday I was going to quit that minute because it was just the week was too long. But by the time I get to Wednesday, you're kind of almost to Thursday. And when you're at Thursday, it's might as well be Friday, right? But Monday and Tuesday, I just couldn't make it. And at one point in the middle of this, who do I talk to but one of our favorite guests on the Hard Won Wisdom podcast, Brooke Whipple. And Brooke is this survivalist, live off grid, live in the moment adventurer. And most people who know me know I am a badass adventurer. I can't by myself. I'll do anything, but I am a wimp compared to Brooke Whipple. Brooke will do anything.
She's boss bitch in the adventure category.
And then she's like, you need to go to my YouTube video. I just quit my sucky job or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but I just quit my awful job and listen to that. So I immediately go to it and I'm listening to it. She walked out of her job and she's going to bet on herself and her YouTube channel. And by like 5 minutes into it, I've decided I have to quit my job that minute. I'm going to quit my job. I call Michelle and she's like, okay. But then I thought, I'm not going to quit my job because Brooke Whipple made a video and told me to quit my job, right? I'm going to be a little more deliberate, but I knew something had shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And people, if you have not seen Brooke Whipple on her channel, go to Girl in the Woods. She's my superhero. And so I know, aren't we lucky we're friends with her?
Yeah.
We even went camping with her. And she's just, but something had shifted. And I had a really good speech at the Atlanta World Congress Center. So in the convention center, it was this really big event. And I put on my Fawn outfit and people recognized me and I got up there to speak. And I thought, oh my God, just enjoy this moment. Because I had spent 3 months feeling small, like really small. And the minute I got in that convention center, it felt like I was growing taller. And then by the time I get up there to speak, I'm like, enjoy every single second of this. This is your passion. It's your love. And while I was speaking, I thought of something that I hadn't remembered in a while. And this is a story that may be something that you all can tap into when you're trying to do something different. But I have to move this calendar back to the year 2001. And that was when my first book, Hard Won Wisdom, came out. And Hard Won Wisdom was doing well, but a friend of mine was the editor of the alternative newspaper in Tampa. And she wanted to hire me as the senior editor. And she says, you can speak on the side if you want, but come and do this. This would be a good job for you. You have benefits, you have a good salary. And I did the same thing that a lot of us do is I took a job based on what I thought the secure option was. Right. And Michelle, you've done that, right?
Oh, 100%. And sometimes it's worked out well, and sometimes it hasn't worked out well because it was misaligned.
And this job and that weekly paper, the alternative paper, was called the Weekly Planet. And that was misaligned because I was a traditional investigative journalist, get all the facts. It's right. It's black and white. The rules are very clear. And these were not clear rules. And it felt off, but I was getting used to it. And one day I went and did a speech for the Rotary Club in St. Petersburg, Florida. Okay. Now, this is the memory that's coming back to me when I'm doing this speech in Atlanta. And so I went to the Rotary Club, and it was like, I don't know, 100, 150 old men watching me give a speech in 2001 about my book on women's empowerment and leadership, right? And those old guys,
Perfect audience.
Right, they bought $1,200 worth of books that day. And I remember when I left there, I thought to myself, I can do this. And I went back to the Weekly Planet and I quit and never looked back. Susan, the editor, is a dear friend of mine and also counseled me on leaving this job I just did. But I did not work from that time, 2001, until this. And that job, and in 2001, I was only there 7 weeks. But I remember thinking,
timer.
They what?
I have a reputation as a short timer.
I know.
You get the red flag over over your resume going, wait a second.
But, I have had jobs for a long time, too. Let's not, I suffered through one for 8.5 years. And I've had some long jobs, but my longest job is working for my best boss, which was me. Anyhow, so I'm in Atlanta and I'm thinking about the Rotary. And there's a voice inside of me, and it's not my voice. So we can only speculate whose voice it was. I don't know, but the voice says, you got off your path. Get back on your path. And I knew in that moment I was done. I was going to quit. And I was ebullient. I felt so much excitement and so much potential and so much energy because I knew that my future all was coming down to me and that I was going to recreate my life because now it's post-COVID. There are more meetings, there are more opportunities, and my business is coming back. It's coming back, people. And it's like, wow, I just needed to get back on my path.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing, Fawn, how I think there's 2 things I'd call out. One, just make the damn decision, whether or not it's stay or go. Like the moment you make a decision, there is this inner conflict that sort of, you kind of release the pressure valve, right? Like, have decided. And that's one that just feels good. So for those of you out there who are riding the fence, make the decision. One way or the other, just make it. Because if you make the wrong one, you can always do something different. And then 2 is now whenever you make the decision that you need to make, the hard one sometimes because it's uncomfortable and it feels risky and it's unknown, but it's the right decision.
Oh, absolutely. But the reason I could make that decision, and this is really important, is that I always lived within my means. Mm-hmm. I have a wonderful home. I don't have a palace, right? I always, in the good, lucrative years, I just socked the money away. And honestly, you have more choices when you live within your means. The more you're spending on things you don't need, the more you're putting on credit, the fewer choices you have. And also, there are times in life when you don't have a choice. And it could be financial, but it also could be because of circumstance. If I were married and my significant other had cancer, you don't have a choice. You have to show up and do what you have to do. There are some times when you don't have options.
Maybe right now, you may not feel like you have the choice right now, or you're choosing, now is not the right time, but that choice just needs to be delayed a little bit.
But I do think we need to make choices based on power and not fear, and that we should not talk ourselves out of our potential because we think it may not work out, right? I know somebody who's been teetering on leaving a corporate job, and we're starting to talk about it. And I said, when you think about it, what are the odds that if you wanted to backtrack, if things, and I don't think you should give yourself an out to fail, but let's just say things didn't work out. What are the odds that you wouldn't be able to turn around, walk back into a job that pays you exactly what you're making today? And she said, 0. Well, then what do you have to lose? The truth is, if you're thinking about making changes in your life, you can make them. You need to fortify your risk. You need to figure out what you need to do in order to get prepared. Sock your money away, look at your finances, and take the chance and bet on yourself, because the idea that you have no opportunity to get prepared again is not true.
Right. You're not going to end up on the side of the road with the can begging for a place to stay. And I think that's what holds so many of us back, that stay in uncomfortable situations, is exactly for that. I mean, certainly, there's certainly been plenty of times in my life where, that's me, and I've done that and I've made it work, but you just kind of kick the can. And isn't it funny, Fawn, how, you said something earlier about investing in yourself. Isn't it funny how easy it is for us to put our eggs in the basket of someone else's work ethic? Let me just actually give an example. So, let's talk about stock market or investing in a company. We will decide, I'm going to invest in XYZ company, and it's a risk. Like, I don't know the leadership personally. I don't know what kind of people they are. I don't know all the motivation, but I'm going to sock away, I don't know, $40,000 or some, whatever the number is, in XYZ company, and I'm going to take a risk. But when it comes to ourselves, when we know the person and the integrity and the work ethic, and I mean, I'm kind of preaching to something that, I've been dealing with, is then why do we hesitate? Like, are we suddenly not going to roll up our sleeves and bust our ass like we've always done? No, but we begin to have this doubt of our ability to succeed. And, that's the stuff that I've been pouring into myself recently, for a couple of projects that I'm working on. And it's like, no, I don't want to, I can't do that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. I'll win because that's what I do. I'm a survivor. I'll figure it out.
We'll figure, I did an interview a long time ago with Wilma Mankiller, the late Wilma Mankiller, who was the first female chief of the Cherokee Nation. And I remember her talking about how there come certain times when you have to dance on the roof a little bit faster. And I think about that because sometimes when you feel like it's going to fall in and everything's going to crumble, you just dance a little faster. And also, I always tell people, have a plan for your success, because that's the greatest piece of fiction you're ever going to write. And I know that because when I quit my job to write my first book, I envisioned all this fast success, and it was every possible disaster, but it got me here, right? And it paid off so big because I kept going with it. And I use this image when I'm doing keynotes of, your plans and then reality. Your plans are that you're going to get on a path to ride your bike to the top of a mountain, and it's a straight line to the sunshine. But what it is, you're riding along, and then there's a big drop, and you have to cross a boulder field, and then climb back up, and then you have to traverse a ladder, and then it goes back down, and you have to cross a moat, and then there's a big thunderstorm, and then you get to the sun, right? Then you get there. And what I learned is there is no there, right? You get there for a moment, and then it goes down again, and then up and down, and you got to learn. We are here at Earth School. We are here to learn how to be good humans, and that we will have every possible obstacle, and it just makes us stronger. And this was a hard year behind me, right? Because of the diagnosis and then the job thing. And honestly, I'm really proud of myself because I stayed in the game. I had fun. Every week I had fun. I did fun things to keep myself happy. I chose to cope. When I had that stupid job, I would get up at the crack of dawn to go kayaking for sunrise, and I could be back at my desk by 8:30 in the morning because I did that. And then there were days when my lunch hour came around, and I would jump in my car, run to the beach, go swim for 20 minutes, and come right back. And I lived, and I made it through all of this. And I learned I'm really strong. And for those of you who aren't sure about what to do when it comes to a risk, have faith that you're really strong, and that whatever comes, you're going to learn how to manage it because you get stronger. The more you do that's hard, the easier it is to do things that are hard.
And I don't think you'd be called forward towards something if it wasn't meant for you. You know what I mean? Like, if it's not your path, you don't feel a connection to it, and you don't, if you want to, you do feel a connection. If you do feel a calling, it's a matter of, I think, of honoring it, because it's going to lead you somewhere positive.
But and I do want to give a little caveat with this, because you haven't spoken at so many companies and different kinds of things. And I don't know how many people in our audience would be suspect to this, but there are a lot of companies, multi-level marketing companies, that will make it seem like this is your path. Just go ahead, do it, pay a lot of money, buy all this crap, and then you're going to make all this money selling it. And you know what? You're not going to make anything, right? You have to do your research. And the same as that, there are so many consultants who will take your money to coach you into things that are not real. I know somebody who, look, just in my own industry, I was on somebody's podcast, and she told me she paid somebody $27,000 for him to, and he was apparently a very well-known speaker who I had never heard of. I mean, he had been a speaker. I looked him up. $27,000 for him to craft her a keynote speech. And she was going to then become a motivational speaker. Well, she was in her 60s, nice lady. But, look, if you're in your 60s and you're going to pull that off, you better be cosmetically perfect, because it's an ageist business, right? And I knew she was not going to make it on the circuit. I knew, there was no doubt. And $27,000 for a speech, maybe $2,000. That thing probably took him 40 minutes to do, and took the money. And then, Michelle, you know this because there's somebody that has had a bit of success as a speaker, but then kind of hit the wall, and then repositioned as a coach to would-be speakers. Again, taking their money. And I just want to caution people that as you make decisions about what you're going to do next, do your research. Find out from people who have made the decision and invested in it if it really paid off. And don't hire people to teach you how to do things that you can do yourself, right? I mean, there are millions of publishing companies, not millions, but certainly thousands and thousands of publishing companies that you can pay to publish your book for you, so that you can say you have a publisher. What they're doing is what you could do for $80. And they're getting you to buy all these books, and they're taking your money. and getting you to hire publicists and editors. And you can do all of this for yourself for just a fraction of that cost. But there are people out there that want to take your money. So I'm just saying, as you have a dream, do your research.
Well, I think you raised such a good point in terms of education, because you have to educate yourself so you can make a good decision. That doesn't mean to say that you can't hire people to do work on your behalf, but don't hire people, the wrong people, because you are naive and didn't do your due diligence. I think hiring people's fine, but hire the right people. If, somebody like me who's working and doing all of these things, I'm not going to go build my own website. I'm not going to do all of those things. However, I can hire someone good to do that for me that is well-intentioned and acts in integrity.
Right. But also you can hire somebody who will charge you $10,000 or $200,000. And, you got to find the right people. So before we go, I do want to circle back because I didn't tell them about where I worked. And she's giggling.
So fun.
Oh, wait a minute, you guys. Okay, hang on, Michelle, say something.
Okay. This is like the big reveal. I will say that the cool thing is when she comes back and tell you this organization does some pretty awesome work in the world.
They do. Amazing
work. So it's an honor to be associated with the impact that they're having. So there was a lot of meaning there.
Yes. I worked for Shriners International in the marketing department.
So for those of you in audio.
Oh, yeah.
We'll tell them what you've got on.
I have put a fez on my head and I'm taking it off now.
That Shriners wear.
In fact, I'm going to, this is going to go in the donation pile because I've literally forgotten the entire experience except to recount it as a story. And honest to God, it was like I blacked it out. Here's the new me. Look at, I made my new, because I have to go to conference.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah. But the Shriners do great work with their hospitals. It's a phenomenal organization that is built on a kind of bizarre fraternity with strange practices. And so the people in marketing were great. They were not strange at all. They were wonderful, wonderful people. This was just a really bad fit for me. And
it was like the hierarchy rules that were strange.
Yeah, that if the Grand Poobah's title is Imperial Potentate, and they also have titles like High Priest and Prophet, and there's some.
And you weren't allowed to talk to you weren't allowed to speak with them.
Oh no, I could.
Oh, I thought they were like on.
No, you can't put their fezzes on. Oh, I couldn't. Well, no, it wasn't that I couldn't speak with them. It's that I couldn't bother them for things that would make me able to do my job. It was just people. I didn't need to recount that. I got away from it. And you know what happened, y'all? I gave 5 weeks notice because I felt guilty that I had done this and it just didn't work out. So I wanted to make sure that they were able to replace me and go on seamlessly. And do not ever give 5 weeks notice, okay? When you're done, you're done. That's a reason it's called 2 weeks notice, okay? Note to self, 2 weeks, not 3, not 4, definitely not 5, 2 weeks, right? So I gave my 5 weeks notice and it's killing me, right? But I'm hanging in there. And the day before I'm done, somebody sends me 8 assignments.
No, wait. Because you go around and you say anything final that needs to be closed out on. This is an important point here before you tell the rest of the story.
Oh, yeah. No, I kept making sure everybody knew my last day. Send it. The day before, I get 8 assignments at 2 p.m. And I'm leaving and going to HR the next day at 2 p.m. So it's 24 hours. And I am looking, and this was not my boss who did this. So I don't want her to think I'm trashing her. I'm not. But I'm looking at that email and it's like, you have got to be kidding me.
So you call me.
Right? I'm like, well, wait a minute, but I couldn't get you. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
You weren't there for me in my moment of need. And I'm looking at this thing and it's like, what are you going to do to me? I am not doing this. I'm not doing this. I am not doing this. So finally, I just write an email that says, the whole point of me giving 5 weeks notice was so that I could leave on good terms and on top. And I will be leaving tomorrow in HR at 2 p.m. And I do not have time to do these assignments. So, and I've asked repeatedly if there was anything else. So please pick one, and I will try to finish that by the time I leave. So I picked one, and that's what I did. And then I left, and I swear to God, it's like the faintest memory in my life. It was 4 months total, right? But it's like it never even happened. And believe me, I'm really glad it's in my rearview mirror. And I knew it was going to be material for you all, and I'll use it on stage in some way. But people, know your path, right?
Know your path.
Know your path.
Follow
Know your path. So, my path now, I do speaking, book editing. Let me know what you need. That's my path. Let's keep me moving forward on this path, because that's my path to happiness. And you have to know yours as well.
It's a beautiful thing. I'm so proud of you for having that experience, because I think it just gives you a whole new dimension and reminder of what it's like for so many women out there in the workforce. So it's just gonna enhance your stories and your ability to connect, because you got reminded.
Yeah.
You got reminded.
Quit your sucky jobs, people. Okay, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Bye
everybody.
Thank you for joining the Hard Won Wisdom podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Join us weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network. Visit hardwonwisdom.com for more on this podcast and for links to Fawn and Michelle's web pages and social media. Also, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll see you next week.